Hello, hello, I'm Jenny with GoBox Art Crate, and we are working on some Halloween projects right now. Right now, the thing I have going on with Halloween is this really fun 3 ornament project kit. And we've got the pink ghost, the little ghost on the mushroom, and today we're going to do the haunted house, which has glitter. Yay! Glitter makes it all so good. And I do mention later on in these videos that you can add glitter to these. I think the eyes would be a great place to add the Mod Podge and the glitter to hold it on. Painting glitter around the background might be a little difficult because there are little things to paint around, but you could do a border around the ghost with the Mod Podge and then sprinkle black glitter on that. That would be an idea. Same with this one. Okay, I'm going to move these aside. And we're just going to get right into it. So I am using the 4 brush pack that we sell. This is available on gobox.com, our website, for $12. It has 4 sizes. I use these throughout the year for all of our paintings. You just rinse them with some warm soapy water and lay them flat to dry when you're all done. And those brushes will last you a good long time. Okay. For the most part, we're going to use small brushes. I don't think we use this big one at all. And looking at this, yes, you could use it some on the moon, but I don't think we'll use it. So let's take, looking at our remaining 3, let's pick the biggest of those 3, which is the number 8. You can go ahead and dip it in your water cup, kind of brush it gently across the bottom. And dry that off. Make sure you dry off this metal part, because that's the area where the little rogue drips of water will hang out and come falling down onto your project, leaving a big splotch. It happens all the time to me. So I try to remember to dry that off really good. Sorry, just a minute. I'm just putting my hair back because it is bothering me. Okay, so let's take that number 8 brush, and we're going to start by mixing. We'll pull some yellow aside. Let's grab just a little bit of white from the edge. And we're just going to lighten this yellow a very small amount. Now what this will do, in addition to just lightening it a little, it's also going to add opacity. So it didn't change the color too much. I just want a little bit of white, mainly for that opacity. Throughout the project, I mention this in all the other videos because this is a mistake I make continuously. Try to just pay attention the whole time to where this drilled hole is. Now on the haunted house, it can sit crooked because it's an old rickety haunted house. So that would be okay if you accidentally had your house sitting crooked. But I do try to keep that in mind because I've had to redo so many. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop down just maybe about 1/4 of an inch down from the drill hole. And I'm just going to sketch a circle. One of the things that's helpful here is I pay attention to the distance between the circle and the edge, and that helps me get something that's somewhat even. We do sort of fade this moonlight out into the edges, so it doesn't have to be 100% even. That's how we get this nice fade later, the fade out I'm talking about. So let's go ahead now and fill this in. I think I'll make it a little bit bigger as I'm working around. I do like the size of the moon because then it makes those windows look all lighted up. Now this, you can see the difference in color, and we're just getting this opaque or more opaque circle on here first. And then we're going to start adding pure yellow and then obviously some orange to get that real Halloween style harvest moon going on. So I'm running out of my color mix, but I've got the moon mostly filled in. So now is the time, I'll just kind of let my brush run out of paint here. Now's the time I'll just dip it in the pure yellow and brush that in. Now, we've got wet paint and we're putting wet paint on top of that wet paint, which can cause an issue with acrylic paint, primarily on canvas. These little pressed wood ornaments are great because the paint dries really fast. Sometimes that's helpful and sometimes it's not, but in this case it is helpful having that dry pretty fast. Okay. So just get a thin coat on here. We will add more and more. We're going to develop that moon really nicely. Now we want to start moving out into the dark sky. Now this transition can be a bit of a pain because We want this faded look where the moon's just kind of fogging out. You see that in the fall a lot, at least out here in the Northwest, Pacific Northwest. And then we'll go ahead and start adding black. So we're going to go from light to dark really fast, but I do want a little transition in there. So go ahead and take your brush, pick up the littlest nick of black. See that? Just a tiny, tiny bit on the corner. Stir it in here, and I can tell already I need to add a bit more. It's easier to just keep adding more than it is to wipe out what you did and have it be too dark. So this is not a pleasant color. It's kind of greenish and weird. I'm gonna add a little more yellow in there. It's funny, the black and yellow do make a greenish color, but we're going to need this. So go around the edge of your moon, and I'm just letting my brush run out of paint, which happens right away because of this material that just sucks the paint right up. But as I'm going around the edge, my moon is still a little bit wet, so you can see the edges are kind of hazing out just a bit, which is what I want. That's a happy thing. Okay, this is a little dark. I actually do want it to transition to being darker. So to me, this looks like if you've ever hard-boiled an egg too long, that's what the yolk ends up being. Like there's a ring around the yolk that's kind of dark greenish. That's the look we're going for right now. So nice. Okay, so yeah, that's it's where we want it right now. Not so pretty, but we'll get it there. Now I'm going to stir in more black. And let's add a touch of orange. Maybe a touch more yellow for me. A little more orange, a little more yellow. So this sky around the edges is not pure black. It ends up with this kind of brownish grayish tone, and that is just from the orange and yellow. Now I'm going to go around. This is where you're really going to see a harsh line where the light color meets the dark, but don't worry about that. I'm going to teach you how to soften that up. One thing that's helpful here, I know I was just using short choppy brush strokes, but it reminded me that using longer brush strokes like this will help you get a better fade for this sort of thing. But on the edges here, you can use short choppy ones. But as you get towards the moon, those long rounded brush strokes are going to help you a lot. Okay, so I'm just replacing this hole where it needs to go. Now I'm just checking to see if I've got any bits of this surface that are showing through, and there are a few here and there. And this is where we need to be at this point. Just sort of faded out circle. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but we will get it there. We're going to make that beautiful harvest moon that is going to make this look all nice and silhouetted. I'm going to wash my brush off. Go ahead and dry that off. Dry off your metal ferrule. Taking a sip of my coffee. It's morning here. It is September and I am ready for Halloween. So that's what we're doing. Okay, let's go ahead now, and this should be mostly dry. It can be a little sticky. It can be a little bit wet. Let me see. Yeah, I'm still picking up a little yellow residue. Let's go ahead and make sure your brush is clean. Pick up some yellow. I am working with a very polluted yellow. I might add a bit more to my palette real quick. You don't need much paint with these ornaments, which is nice. You'll have lots of extra paint to work with. And you've got, with the 3 ornaments, you have 3 reverse sides. Just make a reversible ornament. That's fun. So I'm going to take just plain yellow. Start brushing it in the middle. I'm working from the middle, working my way out. And now as I get to the edge where the dark and light meet, I have very little paint on my brush. In fact, if you've got too much, just dry it off on your towel. It's apparently a comet in the sky now. But all I'm doing now is just hazing out the edges by running a almost paint-free brush around the seam where the light and dark color meet. And I need to add just a little more paint. So see what I'm doing? I'm painting in the middle first just to knock off excess paint. And then coming around the edges. And I've got some areas that look like they could use a little more of that charcoal color as a touch-up. But keep in mind, we do put stars all over, so some of the spots, if they're very minute and small, you don't necessarily need to touch them up. In my case, I am going to touch up a lot of this is very much a back and forth process. It's just kind of how painting is. Adjust here, readjust there. Go back and adjust again. So I'm going to clean that charcoal off my brush. I do have a nice smoother fade. I kind of corrected some of the funky spots there. And I want to start adding some orange to the moon, but it's not really dry enough quite yet. So I think now is a really good time to think about adding all the stars. Now you only need to go about from this drill hole down about 2/3 of the way down, because the ground is going to cover any stars that would be down here. And the best way to do this is if you have the hour brush set, the end of this smallest brush is really pointy, so it's a great way to make tiny stars. If the end of your brush is more rounded, I'm trying to see if I have one nearby. All my brushes are put in this drawer over here. Then you want to use the brush end, the bristle end, with very little white. I'll show you the difference. So here I would use the bristle end, just the tiniest little nick of white, and very carefully dot lots of little stars. Now, the nice thing about using the bristle end is it holds on to paint a lot longer than the handle. The handle's going to run out right away. But your dots don't always end up being perfectly circular. Sometimes they're kind of linear. So that's why I like the handle end. Now, one of the things I do is I'll dip the handle in, just pick up a tiny dot of white, and then I dab it a couple times on the palette just to knock off any excess. And then look at that. I get nice roundish stars. And I like to cluster them together in areas so I don't end up with a polka dot pattern. Sometimes I'll just dip the handle end in a wet dot, and then I can just use the project as my palette. Hey, fresh wet paint here. Another good thing about using the handle of the brush is as it runs out of paint, your stars get smaller and smaller, so it is creating that randomness that nature has for you without too much extra work. Now your stars can come right up to the edge of the moon. And remember, you can have very little, or you can load it up. I tend to like to load them up. A nice starry sky is great. If you happen to live in an area without a lot of city light pollution, I'm envious. I'm partway out in the country, but I do have city light pollution, so the stars are more visible than they would be like around Portland, Oregon, but less visible than they would be if I were further out in the country. All right. So I've got a lot of stars. I can always go back and add more. Every time I teach something, when I do stars, I always end up with more stars on the project. I think I just get talking and load it up. Let's go ahead now, and I'm going to check this. It's probably dry enough to take a little more paint. I am going to use my number 8 brush again. Make sure it's clean. Make sure there's no black on it at all. And this is where we'll start adding more yellow and some orange. So let's dip the brush in, start in the middle, and just sort of dab and swipe the brush. So the reason I'm doing this is to give the moon kind of a textured look, because we know it is loaded up with craters. There's a lot of texture on the surface. That's what the dark spots are. They're craters, and indentations, canyons. There's a very large part called the Sea of Tranquility. And apparently that's where the moon landing was in the Sea of Tranquility. And I think it's a big canyon. It's that very dark spot that you can see on the moon, the real big one, from what I understand from my online reading. Thank you, Wikipedia. So as I'm getting out to the edges, I'm letting my brush run out of paint because I've already done this job of sort of hazing the moon out. And I don't want to come in here with a whole bunch of bright light paint and then be stuck with a circle that I'm having to blend out when I've already got stars on there, if that makes sense. Okay, looking good. Kind of looks vaguely moon-like. I'm going to readjust, make sure that drill hole's at the top. I don't need to wash my brush. I'm going to take a little orange and let's swipe some off. And I'm going to mix a tiny bit of yellow in that. And now I'm going to start dabbing this on, thinking of it like if you look at the moon, you can Google a picture of the moon. This big canyon here, which I believe is the Sea of Tranquility. That's what I'm trying to replicate here using orange. So this does two things. It adds the dark spots on the moon, but it also adds orange to the moon. And if you find that the paint is lifting every time you try to add more because we've got wet yellow on there, and as I said earlier, wet acrylic paint on wet acrylic paint does not always jive, you can pause the video, grab a hairdryer, dry this off real quick, and then go for it. Or you can, if you just sit for 5 minutes or less, it'll dry. I think mine's dry enough. And in fact, some of the thin areas where my brush did scrape a bit of paint off, you just see a bit of the wood, this color background showing through, and it kind of has that effect of looking like a crater on the moon. Now just dab as much as you want. Now you could try adding just a bit of plain orange and see if you like that. The cool thing here, if that feels a little too orange to you, the way to fix that is to wash your brush, dry it off really good, get all the water off as much as you can, and then just glaze over any spots that you feel like have too much orange with a bit of yellow. It's going to soften everything up. And this is about how I like mine to be. If you want to add, like if you went a little too crazy and you feel like, my moon has too many craters now, you can add some bright yellow back in anywhere. Mine's not really wanting to stick too much. But just keep working that until you get it how you want. Keep in mind that a lot of the moon, at least half of it's getting covered with stuff. With trees, graves, and a very large haunted house. I originally did this project at my live art studio, which used to be open pre-COVID, on wood slice ornaments, so actual slices of tree trunks. And they're usually about this big around, so they're a bit smaller. But there was a lot of unpredictability with that because it is a natural product, which is great. They look beautiful, but finding the right size, the right shape, but mostly one that has the hole drilled in an area that makes sense, because I would get them in from the company I order them from. And it would be, I may have mentioned this on another video, like pear-shaped, which is cool. But instead of drilling the hole at the top, they would have drilled the hole in like one of the wider parts. So the unpredictability of that made it a little more challenging, plus the size differences. These are all right at about 4 inches, and the surface is nice and smooth. So I do love these. Okay, I think I've spoken long enough to buy some time for this to dry down here just about where I need it to be. And now we're going to switch. I'm thinking here. I don't think we need to switch down a brush size quite yet. We're going to use the number 8. We're going to sketch out this hillside, which it kind of rounds up just enough to hold a house. Down here with the graveyard and sunken graves, and then back up for this tree to be on here. And let's pick black. I'm going to start way over here. So I'm going to come across sort of flat-ish. So I have enough room to have a house. Now the house can go downhill like this one does. Think of it like one of those houses that has the daylight basement built in. I always thought those were so cool. Some of my friends had them. We lived on a street with houses built in the 70s. And we just had a non-daylight basement kind of house. But I always was jealous of my friends who had that daylight basement. So now I'm just going to fill this in down to the bottom. And I will mention you can paint the sides of this. The sides, I've noticed, are a little rougher than this. And so the paint it absorbs differently. It can take a lot more paint to paint the sides, but you can do it. What I would recommend you do is just use this brush and take a glob of paint and just pull it down as you work your way around. I never paint the sides of mine. It's a combination of laziness and not wanting to get my fingers too painty, even though they really do get painty. All right. So now I'll take a look, and I feel like I could bump this up a little higher, just a bit over here. It's not going to make a huge, big difference, but in my little OCD world, it does. There. Going to reposition this hole at the top, and we are going to switch some brushes around. Clean this one off. So these are fairly, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call them heavy. They're a little sturdy. If you have one of those bendable Halloween trees, like the artificial, obviously it would be artificial because you can't find a black tree in nature, but you can, bend the tree bough up and hang this on it. Super fun. Okay, so let's take our smallest brush. We're going to start sketching out the house. And so we want to use this small brush. We're going to use black paint. It's a very easy house. I know it looks maybe like it's more complicated, but we go piece by piece, like wing by wing. I'm going to show you how to do it. One of the things I do want to do anytime I'm drawing, I like to have the paint be a little bit more liquefied or watered down. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water, put a drop or two of water next to my black, and then I'm going to stir some black into it. So we want it about the consistency of heavy cream. So it's not going to roll off your palette. Like if I were to hold my palette vertically, it's not really going to roll off. If it was like the texture of milk, it would, but heavy cream is going to be slow. Now, when I mix paint, I have a lot on my brush, and I don't want to start a detailed drawing with a lot of paint in my brush. So you can either pull and twist your brush and then redip the tip of the bristles in some fresh paint, or you can dry it off in your towel and then redip the tip of the bristles. So way over here, remember to line up the drill hole. Way over here, I'm going to start with this wing here, and then we just add some towers onto it. I keep it as simple as possible. I'm going to make a straight line is maybe about a half inch, a little less than half an inch. And then I'm going to parallel that, even though this part doesn't show because it gets covered in solid with black. It will help you design your house. So that line is somewhere right here underneath all that glitter. And now for the arched part, I like to make it really tall and pointy and kind of a steep slope. Something that looks like it maybe wouldn't exist in nature unless it's in a Tim Burton movie. And then this part of the house, right across here, you can make it sag a little, scoop down just a bit. All haunted houses should be saggy. And now this particular line here, we need to parallel this, even though it does get covered up too. And now you can just connect and draw a straight line down here, even though it gets covered up. This is your basic way of drawing a 3/4 view house. And before we move along, I want to color this part in and draw the windows and doors, windows and door, because that will help you to be less confused as we go along. So up here, I do a round window just because I think that's fun. And if you've got room, you could even do an X through it, like a cross shape. So it's a paned window. Fill in that above it. And then for the door, a nice arched doorway is fun. You could do a pointed arch, Gothic style. That wasn't very good, but it'll do. And then over here, I love the look of like the drawings of Hogwarts from Harry Potter. And there's that one wing, the Great Hall. It has all the long skinny windows on the side. And so I like to do that. Let's go ahead and fill this in first, and then we'll draw those side windows. Now, the cool thing here is if you make a mistake and you accidentally paint over one of your windows or doors, let the whole thing dry and then my recommendation would be to use a little white and yellow mixed together and redraw the window, let that dry, and then just add the plain yellow and then maybe a tiny bit of orange mixed with yellow, just to try to match the background color of the moon. Although it doesn't have to, because these are technically lights inside the building, so they could be a completely different shade of yellow. They don't have to be the orangey yellow. The orangey yellow just makes it easy. We don't have to worry about painting on top of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to draw these 3. 1, fill that area in, and they can be wonky. It's a haunted house. 2, fill that in, and above here, you might have room to do 4. I'm just going to do 3. Nice. Now I'll fill in this roof. Could even mix some black back in there. Filling in, you can use a little more non-liquefied paint. For drawing though, having it with a little water is so helpful. And then this is going to get covered in glitter later, so it doesn't even have to be a solid opaque black. If it's kind of grayish like the sky, that's totally fine. It will become solid black when we put that awesome fine black glitter on. I love this stuff. I bought some recently thinking they were small tubes, and they arrived and they were huge. I'm like, what am I going to do with all this black glitter? I don't think I'll ever sell enough kits to go through all that black glitter. I just didn't read the size. Oops. Okay. So now I'm going to have us start adding these very simple towers. There's one that's stacked right on top of here like a wedding cake. And then there's one that just goes off the side. Super easy. Go ahead and refresh your paint with a little water if needed. And pull and twist your brush. Redip the tip of the bristles. And let's get to it. So this one up here, I'm just going to draw 2 parallel lines, kind of centered in the middle of that slopey roof. And then I'm going to go straight across. And remember we did this tall pointed arch? I'm going to do that here too. And it's okay if it goes into the sky. So the sky is kind of grayish. So this black should stand out even though it goes up into the sky. But also when you put the glitter on, it's going to stand out no matter what. So let's fill that little roof in. And then if you want to do a round window, or I've got the two windows like those, whatever you want to do, an arched window, you could do a Gothic arch. So the Gothic arches, they go up, and instead of rounding like this, they go up and they just point and back down. You could even you could draw it rounded first and leave that. And then have a little, that's for the advanced tiny brush painters. Okay, so I'll just draw a dividing line between the two and fill in around. So I have 2 rectangular windows. While that is drying, not that I need to wait for it to dry, but I do want to, I've got room now. I did a bigger window here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a cross in the middle, just to make it more interesting. Looking good so far? I had to tilt it because I have a little bit of glare from the light here on the side. And so for me, it just, this part kind of disappears, but then when I tilt it, I see, oh yeah, I can definitely see it. Okay, last tower. This one is shorter than, you can see the peak of it is shorter. We had a cross on the top if you want. So I'll come across here and make a little dot where I want the peak of that. I'm making a dot where this is, not where the cross is, where this is. And I'll just do that swooping triangle shape. This can be tall and narrow. You can just dissolve right into the house. There was no architect here. Ghosts built this house. And this part is super easy. You want to leave a little overhang, but come in just a bit and just go straight down. And however many windows you can fit on here, go for it. I just have one skinny rectangular one on the original, but I can tell already my house in this one is bigger. More stars, bigger house. I'll probably end up with bigger tree. It's just the way it goes when teaching. I've got room. I'm going to do a round window up here, right under the eave. Fill in that roof. Little tower point here. And I think I'll do a little rounded archway down here. And then you're just going to fill in everything around. If you want to put more windows in, you can. Wonkiest house ever. Okay, that's pretty good. I've got just enough room for a little graveyard and the tree, spooky tree over here. Now, painting this little cross, I would highly recommend that you practice on whatever palette you're using, so that what you want to practice is very, very light pressure. Now, I'm cleaning my brush just so I start fresh. And you just want feather light pressure. Like one of the things Bob Ross says sometimes is 3 hairs and some air. That is the perfect description. That's what you want. 3 brush hairs and some air. So go ahead and find some liquefied paint. Maybe even, if needed, dip the tip of your bristle in water and stir some in. Make sure you don't have a ton of paint on your brush. And I like to pull down. I feel like I have better luck with that, but some people maybe like to go up. So I'm going to just pull down, go above the roof. Apparently I don't have enough paint on my brush. Light pressure. So I have this little stick. And then towards the top, I'm going to make a horizontal stick. And they don't have to be balanced. It can be like a handmade looking thing. I think I almost did too light a pressure. I can't see it. There. So keep that technique in mind, because we're going to do a couple more crosses, 1 or 2 more, if you want, out here in the graveyard. But the other gravestones are very simple. We have a wedding cake and we have an arch. So kept very simple. Now, this graveyard is supposed to be old and haunted looking. So you can see I purposely tilted some of the graves. Like maybe the roots from this tree are just pushing this grave right up. All right, I'm going to refresh my black paint with some water, making that same consistency we did earlier when we sketched out the house. pull and twist. It looks like I have a horse or something, a llama. It's kind of more shorter snout like a llama. Look, he's running here or posing. He has 3 legs. Here, let's do this one back here there. So funny. It's like looking for pictures in clouds. Okay, so I'll stop being distracted now. Now let's do another cross down here. It can lean. This is a little graveyard marker. Ooh, take a breath. And now a little arch. It can lean this way. It can lean this way. You can make it straight up and down, whatever you want to do. And now I will teach you how to draw the wedding cake one. These are like those pioneer grave markers. We have a pioneer cemetery just within walking distance of the house. And the grave markers, they used to do some pretty epic ones. I got to go to Boston and tour some of the really old graveyards there. So I'll continue my story in a minute. I just did a box, and now I'm going to do a smaller box on top. Or you can do an arch. Either way, how about an arch? Oh, I just messed it up. Okay, so I'm going to do an arch, and now I'm going to fix this by... There. You can do another box on top or an arch. I went special and did an arch. Anyways, we got to tour really old graveyards from like the 1700s. We got to see Mother Goose's grave, but the grave markers are so plain compared to some of the later, more pioneer graveyard ones that are big like this. They're just all these flat little arches. And they're not, by flat, I mean they're not super thick front to back. But that was a really neat experience to see Mother Goose's grave. Okay, so we've got just enough room for creepy tree. And part of that tree can go into your night sky. It does a little bit there. The tree can be a challenge to draw because getting those ends of the branches pointy is something we want, but it's something that can be a little bit of a challenge because of using very little pressure. Now, one of the things I find helpful for me is pulling towards myself. And the way we do that when drawing a tree is when I taught live classes, I would have the students turn your canvas upside down. We'll draw the trunk first. When we start drawing branches, turn your canvas upside down and think of it like you're painting a forked lightning bolt. And that took the pressure off of a lot of people, and a lot of people really liked it. You may not like it. I would say try it out, and if it's just not for you, go back to this style and paint upwards. You just want to make sure you have a good amount of water mixed in with your paint. Not so much that you're going to have water rolling down and splotting onto your surface, though. So I'm going to take my little brush, refresh my horse or llama, whatever it is over here. Now he's getting a big bib. Okay, so I'm going to pull twist, redip the tip of the bristles, and let's go for it. So the tree can lean. In fact, leaning is really good here. And I'm going to make like a kind of a snake shape. So see how it's sort of wavy? Think of it like a snake rising up out of the ground. Nice and creepy. And now the other side is going to be thicker down here, but as it gets this parallel line, as it gets closer to this one, as it goes up higher, you want it to be closer to that one. So you end up with this kind of wedge shape. Let's go ahead and fill that in up to here. So we have a snag. You can leave it like this if you want. Just have an old broken off tree. That's creepy too. But what I want to do first, and I will flip this upside down, but first I want to start the main branches. So the main branches on this are these 2 or even 3. So you think of it like we're turning this tree into a weird Y shape. So basically, these 2 are going to split off from each other, and you get that Y shape. Now you can, if you want, do this one, but I'm going to actually turn this and pull it towards the house. A little wavy. Lessen up your pressure as you get out to the end. So then you have a 3-pronged a 3-pronged snag, and you can leave it like this. It's super spooky. If you really don't want to do the super light touch branches, or you're worried about doing that, maybe you haven't painted enough to where you have built up a lot of confidence with the small brush, I'd just say leave it like that. But if you want to try this out, I'm going to turn this upside down, refresh my paint with water, pull, twist, turn, redip the bristles, and think of this like ear paint. This is a black bolt of lightning coming out of the sky. And so we're angling towards this, if you need a point to angle towards. So I'll bring these up, and then I'm going to start splitting off of some of these. Maybe make the random broken off one too. So I like to make the branches long, slightly wavy. A few broken ones mixed in there. You can make some branches go off into the night sky. You can make some reaching towards your building. And now I'm going to flip it around and have a look at the progress. That looks pretty good. So definitely pulling down is very helpful. If that does not appeal to you, you can paint upwards. Just use very light pressure, especially as you get to the ends of these branches. But I think my tree is done. If I do any more to it, it's just going to end up with too much going on. You've got room if you want to do another gravestone, like grave marker, like maybe a little cross here. I have room. You might not have room. This window here is large enough too that I could do a cross. Maybe I'll make this brace up here a little higher up so it resembles more of a cross. That sort of disappears. Oh well. Now I do have a little area I could touch up, or I could leave it. I thought I'd leave it earlier, but I'm going to just touch it up while I'm waiting for some parts to dry. So finish up your tree and then wash and dry your brush off. And we're going to get going on the glitter in just a minute. After I take a sip of my pumpkin spice latte. Okay, now I wait on the Mod Podge. So you can see from the beginning, I just put the 4 colors, which I apologize, I didn't mention them. White, craft yellow, craft orange, and black. You probably could see them on camera, so I do apologize. I usually mention the colors at first. And then you're going to have a little container that looks just like white paint. I don't have that nearby. So it'll be a container like this that has a little bit of Mod Podge in it. And I just have this little bottle because I'm at home, and I'm going to put a drop of that on my palette. The reason I don't put it on in the beginning is 2 things. It'll dry fast, but also it's really easy to mistake it for white. I might even still do that now. It happens all the time to me. And then you'll want to have your glitter nearby. You'll have a little bag like this filled with black. I've just got my little shaker because like I said, I am at home. And I just shook some over this. Some glitter came out of my little bag onto here. That might be fun. Christmas version. And now we want to start, we're just going to do pieces at a time because it's really easy to have this Mod Podge dry and you put your glitter on. You're like, I just painted all over that spot and the glitter didn't stick. That's because it dries fast. So I'll use my number 8 brush and the Mod Podge. I'm going to do this hill first because we know it's dry. Unless you did some stuff to it. I'm going to go right up to the house. We've got this larger brush here, so I'm just doing a kind of a thicker coat. That way it won't dry too fast. I don't know about you guys. I've always despised the smell of Mod Podge. I think it's grown on me a little bit since teaching painting. So we do decoupage stuff in the past. We've done decoupage in the past, and it's grown on me a little bit. I still don't like it. Okay, got that covered. Now I'm going to take my glitter. Now you guys will just pinch in your bag and do this. You probably have a little more control than I will here. And I'm just going to go over here. Maybe shake that around a bit. And then give it a little whack. And that's the ground. That's the easiest part. Now, painting around all these windows is going to be the part that will be irritating, but we'll get through it. So let's use our smallest brush. Let's get the graves now. And if you want to do the tree, you can. Getting up in here, though, with the Mod Podge, you might end up with a tree that looks a lot thicker than you want. So you could even just do the trunk with the Mod Podge and then just let the branches be their own non-glittery surface. So I'll take my little brush. I'll start with this bigger gravestone. It doesn't have to be exact replica. This will dry clear. And I'm not going to do the crosses. They're too small. But I'll do these larger pieces. Little shake of glitter. Shake it around if needed. Nice firm whack. And there the gravestones are nice and glittery. That's so fulfilling. I just love glitter. I see a spot here, and you'll notice this as you go along. Oh, I missed a spot. This doesn't go all the way to the edge. Let's hit that with a little glitter. Nice. Now all we have left to do is the house, and it's not too bad. I actually need a little more Mod Podge. Mine has glitter in it now. Before you do the glitter, I should have mentioned this earlier. You want to make sure all your paint is dry. But most of our big work was done, so it's probably mostly dry. Now I'm going to come along here with this little brush. I'll just start from the bottom up, work around the door here, all the way down to the ground. Now, carefully go along the ledge, the roof line here. Just get some nice bold strokes on this roof. Working as quick as you can. Remember, if you accidentally paint outside of your house with this Mod Podge, it dries clear. So it really won't be visible. You might have a slight shine difference. So now that I've got this part of the house painted in, because the Mod Podge does dry quick, I'll go ahead and glitter this part. And then we'll work on the rest of the house. Cool, looking good. Just a little bit left. Get this peak here. These palettes come in useful because you can just roll this right up and throw it in the trash, like glitter and all, unless you want to save your glitter. But we sell those on our website. I think they are $9 each, and they are great. I just love them. I've been using them for about 10 years. Okay, I'm going to get this last little tower. I'm going to skip the cross because it's a bit too small, and I'd probably end up with a lot chunkier cross if I tried to Mod Podge and glitter it. Glitter might mix in with your Mod Podge here because it is still a little wet through there. No biggie. I think think I'm ready to glitter it. Give it a little shake. Final reveal. And there we are. Got a little spot here. I can touch up with a dry brush. Don't want to blow too hard. I'll blow glitter all over my desk. So there it is. Now, just let it dry for a good 3 hours. And then you can come back with a dry brush. It has to be completely dry. You don't want any dampness or anything to your brush. I didn't use this number 4, so it's nice and dry. And you can brush off any excess glitter that's in the background that's just hanging out there, not attached to any paint or anything like that. It will naturally fall off on its own as time goes by. And in fact, when you store these, what I would do is probably wrap it in a piece of tissue paper. Like, I think I worry about a paper towel maybe eventually sticking to it, but I think just like wrapping tissue paper or something like that, put it in its own little small bag, and you won't transfer so much glitter everywhere. But you can always retouch it with glitter if needed down the line. And the cool thing is, if you want to try this again, maybe you've learned some stuff that you want to try again on the back, you can redo the whole thing on the back. Maybe do a different type of haunted house. So there we have it. There's our haunted house ornament. Now you will have your little, there it is, little stretchy string to put through here. And I know I've mentioned this a million times. I like to loop these around wine bottles, unless you have a Halloween tree. But the wine bottle works super cool. And especially if you have a candle on the top here, like an old used wine bottle, stick a taper candle in the top, let the wax drip down, and then put this over it. So there you go. This will give us our complete set. Super fun. I had fun. I love doing this one. I've done this so many times, and the house just gets slightly different every time. But I hope you guys enjoyed doing this, and we look forward to doing some more holiday projects. Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful fall season, and we'll see you for the next video. Bye.